The cold was so penetrating, Amelia could feel it seeping through her wool sweater, a chill that didn't belong to an October night in suburban Massachusetts. It clung to her skin like an invisible frost. That sound, a low, steady rhythm, was unlike anything she had ever heard in her quiet house. It wasn't the television, nor was it music. It sounded like an ancient hymn, a chant from the depths of the earth, and it was coming from her son Leo's room. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She was supposed to be at the office wrestling with end-of-quarter figures. But she had forgotten a crucial file, a lapse in memory that now felt like an intervention of fate. She tiptoed down the oak-paneled hallway, each step as soft as a falling leaf. Leo's door was ajar, and the only light spilling out was from his moon-shaped nightlight, casting eerie dancing shadows on the walls. She peeked through the crack in the door, and her world shattered. In the middle of the room where Leo's crib usually stood was now an old metal wash basin filled with a dark, murky liquid. Her baby boy Leo was in it, the water up to his chest. And surrounding him were not his soft toys, but a circle of old women. They wore long, dark dresses, their faces masks of indifference in the dim light. At the center of the circle, facing Leo, was her. Ms. Morwen, the nanny. Her thin, wrinkled hands were rhythmically tapping a small leather drum, producing the hypnotic sound that was ringing in Amelia's ears. The other women were murmuring a monotonous melody in a language she couldn't recognize. An icy shock ran down Amelia's spine. She wanted to scream, but her throat felt constricted. She wanted to rush in, but her feet were frozen to the spot. Then one of the women lifted her head, and her eyes, empty white as pebbles, stared straight at her through the crack in the door. Panic broke through the paralysis. Amelia shoved the door open, letting out a heart-wrenching scream. "Get out of here!" And then, in the blink of an eye, everything vanished. The drumming stopped. The women dissolved into thin air. The metal basin was gone. Only Ms. Morwen stood there next to Leo's crib, her expression a mixture of annoyance and confusion. The room was silent again, save for Amelia's ragged breaths. "What is it, Amelia?" Ms. Morwen asked, her voice as dry as autumn leaves. "Why are you screaming like that? You'll frighten the boy." Amelia rushed to the crib, snatching Leo up. He was still asleep, a disturbingly deep slumber, his skin unnaturally cold. "Where are they? Where are the women? Where's the basin?" She shrieked, tears streaming down her face. Ms. Morwen looked at her as if she were mad. "What are you talking about? It's just me and Leo here. Perhaps you've been working too hard." It had all started a week earlier with an excited phone call from her husband Mike. "I have good news," he'd said over the phone, his voice rising above the din of the stock exchange floor. "Mom found someone, a nanny. She's an old family friend, someone Mom trusts completely." Amelia had felt a wave of relief wash over her. She loved her son more than anything, but 6 months of maternity leave had left her feeling confined. She missed her job, missed the feeling of being an architect, not just a mother. "Oh, Mike, that's wonderful. I have to call Eleanor to thank her." "She's coming tomorrow morning," Mike continued. "Mom says she's the best. Make sure you treat her well, Amelia. Mom had to pull a lot of strings to get her to help us." But the woman who appeared at their doorstep the next morning was nothing like Amelia had imagined. Ms. Morwen was probably in her 70s with stark white hair pulled back in a severe bun. She was tall and gaunt, dressed in an old-fashioned gray wool dress despite the lingering warmth in the air. Her eyes, hidden behind thick-rimmed glasses, were sharp and seemed to see right through everything. And then there was her bag, an oversized, strangely bulging canvas duffel. "Welcome, Ms. Morwen. Please come in," Amelia said, trying to be friendly. "Would you like some coffee or something to eat?" "No," Ms. Morwen replied, her voice devoid of warmth. "I'd like to wash up and put my things away first." She insisted on not letting Amelia touch her bag. When Amelia offered to help carry it up to the guest room, she clutched the strap tighter, a warning glint in her eyes. Left with no choice, Amelia showed her to the room. A few hours later, Ms. Morwen emerged, looking refreshed. "Where is the baby?" she asked, a fleeting smile on her thin lips. Amelia handed Leo to her, then hurried to the kitchen to prepare lunch. When she returned a few minutes later, a pungent, unpleasant smell hit her. It was an earthy odor, the smell of something decaying. Ms. Morwen was rubbing a thick black cream all over Leo. "What is that?" Amelia asked, wrinkling her nose. "What's that awful smell?" Ms. Morwen looked up, slightly offended. "What smell? This is just a homemade ointment I use for my legs. It's very good for circulation." Amelia's intuition screamed. She quickly took Leo back. "Your lunch is on the table," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. "While you eat, I need to run out and get a few things." It was a lie. As soon as she was out of the house, she called Mike. "I don't like her, Mike," she said bluntly. "She's very strange." Mike sighed on the other end, a sound full of exasperation. "Strange how Amelia, do you have any idea what my mother went through to get her to come? She's Mom's best friend. Do you want to quit your job and stay home? Or would you prefer to send him to some daycare where they'll drug him so he doesn't cry? Why are you so difficult?" He was practically yelling, and Amelia hung up, angry and hurt. That evening when Mike came home, he beamed at the sight of the nanny. "Ms. Morwen," he exclaimed, a broad smile on his face. "I can't believe it's you." "You know her?" Amelia asked, stunned. "Of course," Mike replied. "She was my mom's best friend since they were girls. We're so lucky to have her." Amelia didn't feel lucky. Why would her mother-in-law send her best friend, an old and weary woman, to do a physically demanding job like caring for an infant? But she had no choice. She went back to work the following week, trying to push her worries aside. But one thing she couldn't ignore. Every evening when she came home, Leo was in an unnaturally deep sleep. He didn't stir, didn't cry for milk. He slept through the night as silent as a doll. For a 6-month-old, that was strange. It was alarming. And then today, the day she came home for the forgotten file, she had heard the drumming and seen the horrific scene. Now holding Leo tightly, feeling the disturbing chill of his skin, Amelia knew she hadn't imagined it. Ms. Morwen turned her back, calmly tidying the crib as if nothing had happened. Amelia didn't say another word. She turned, fled the room, ran down the stairs and out of the house she had once thought was her safe haven. She had to get Leo away from there, away from that woman, immediately. Amelia's car sped through the night streetlights, streaking past like blurred comets through her tears. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to go to put distance between Leo and the monstrous shadow in their home. She pulled into the empty parking lot of a closed supermarket, the neon sign casting a sickly green glow. Her hands trembled as she pulled out her phone and dialed Mike. Leo was still asleep in the back seat, a silence that was deeply alarming. "Mike," she sobbed when he answered. "Come home now. I'm out. I saw other people in the house." Meanwhile, back at the house, Amelia had just fled. Ms. Morwen calmly picked up her own phone. She wasn't calling the police. She was calling Eleanor, Mike's mother. Her voice, now trembling and full of hurt, told a completely different story. A story of an overworked Amelia, of postpartum paranoia, of an unprovoked rage directed at an old woman who only wanted to help. "She screamed at me, Eleanor," Ms. Morwen sniffled. "She said I was hurting the baby. Then she grabbed him and ran off. I'm so worried." A mother's protective fury ignited in Eleanor. She immediately called Mike, who was still trying to calm Amelia over the phone. "Listen, Amelia," Mike was saying, his voice edged with annoyance but still patient. "Maybe you're just tired. Come home, we'll talk." Suddenly he fell silent. Amelia heard the beep of call waiting. "Hold on," he said. A moment later, when he returned, his tone had completely changed. It was cold as steel. "Mom just called. She said you assaulted Ms. Morwen and kidnapped our son." "What? No, Mike, that's a lie," Amelia cried, panic rising in her chest. "I saw her with other women. They were doing some kind of ritual with Leo." "Enough, Amelia," he snapped. "Come home, now." When Amelia drove back, her heart heavy with a fear greater than what she had seen in Leo's room, she saw Mike's car was already there. He was standing at the door, his face a mask of cold fury. Miss Morwen stood huddled behind him, looking small and frightened. "What the hell were you thinking?" Mike hissed, as soon as she entered, his voice low enough not to wake Leo, but laced with venom. You embarrassed me. You embarrassed my mother. You treated a respectable woman as if she were a criminal. But I don't want to hear your paranoid fantasies anymore. Mike cut her off. Do you know how hard my mother worked to get her to come here? You have two choices. Either you quit your job and call your mother to help the one you always say is so sick, or you apologize to Ms. Morwen for disrespecting her. Amelia's tears flowed again. Quit my job, Mike. You know I can't. My father, his hospital bills, my mom needs me. Her father had suffered a severe work accident a few years prior, nearly bankrupting her family. Her mother with chronic fibromyalgia couldn't work. Amelia's salary was all that kept them afloat. Then apologize, Mike said, his voice unforgiving. I saw them, Mike, she pleaded desperately. The women, the drum, and Leo in a basin of dirty water. Smack. The slap exploded against her ear, sharp and sudden. Her head snapped to the side, her cheek burning. The shock of the act was more painful than the sting. Mike, her gentle husband, the father of her son, had hit her. His eyes held a wild glint. Don't lie to me again. Apologize to her now, or get out of this house. And Leo stays here. Amelia's world crumbled. Her baby boy, her job, her parents. Everything hung by a thread. She looked at her husband's alien face, then at Ms. Morwen, who watched with a veiled satisfaction. Trembling, feeling empty and broken, Amelia turned to the nanny. I'm sorry, Ms. Morwen, she whispered, for disrespecting you. Ms. Morwen smiled a faint smile that didn't reach her cold eyes and nodded. That night Amelia couldn't sleep. She sat in bed staring into the darkness while Mike lay with his back to her, his breathing steady in sleep. Had she imagined it all? Could stress and sleep deprivation conjure such a vivid hallucination? The bedroom door creaked open. Ms. Morwen stood there holding Leo. He's asleep, she whispered, the same smile plastered on her face. Amelia reached for her son, and the moment their skin touched, a chill shot down her spine. Leo was cold. Not the chill of an autumn night. It was an unnatural cold, as ice, as if the life had been drained from his tiny body. She tried to wake him, shaking him gently, calling his name, but Leo remained in his unbreakable slumber. Something is definitely wrong, she whispered to herself as Ms. Morwen quietly left. I can feel it. The next day at the office, she was a ghost. She couldn't focus on her blueprints. The straight lines and angles seemed to mock the chaos in her mind. During her lunch break, Sarah, an older colleague Amelia had always respected, noticed her distraught expression. You don't look well at all, Amelia. Is something wrong with the new nanny? Sarah asked gently. And then it all came pouring out. Amelia told her everything from the strange smell and Leo's unnaturally deep sleep to the horrifying vision of the women and Mike's slap. She expected skepticism, but instead Sarah listened with a grave expression. If you feel something is wrong, Sarah said firmly when Amelia had finished, then it is wrong. A mother's intuition is rarely mistaken. You should fire her. I can't, Amelia said bitterly. Mike won't let me. Sarah thought for a moment. Well, then there's another way, she said, leaning forward. Install a camera. A hidden one. See exactly what happens when you're not home. The idea, so simple, yet so logical, had never occurred to Amelia. It was like a beacon in the thick fog of her fear and doubt. A way to get proof. A way to prove she wasn't going insane. She left the office early, feigning illness. On her way home, she stopped at an electronics store and bought the smallest security camera she could find, a device easily hidden in a toy or a decoration. When she got home, she found Ms. Morwen on the back porch rocking Leo in the swing. It was the perfect opportunity. Her heart pounding, she slipped into Leo's room and quickly hid the camera inside a teddy bear, placing it on the bookshelf opposite the crib, ensuring the lens had a clear view of the entire room. The deed was done. Now all she had to do was wait. Curiosity, a dangerous poison, began to creep into Amelia's veins. The camera was in place, but it only showed her what happened in Leo's room. What about Ms. Morwen's room? That door, always closed now, seemed like a gateway to the epicenter of this madness. What secrets did that enormous canvas bag hold? Taking advantage of the moment, Ms. Morwen was still on the porch. Amelia tiptoed to the end of the hall. Her hand closed around the cold doorknob and turned. It was locked. That was strange. Why would a nanny need to lock her door in someone else's house? She pressed her ear against the wood, trying to listen, but there was only silence. Frustrated, she was about to turn away when a voice came from the other side of the door, a voice that made her blood run cold. "Push harder," the voice whispered, dry and terrifyingly familiar. "It's not locked." It was Ms. Morwen's voice. Amelia jumped back, her heart stopping. It was impossible. Ms. Morwen was on the porch. She could hear the gentle creak of the swing. Then, who was in the room? Who had just spoken to her in that voice? Cold sweat broke out on the back of her neck. "Open the door," the voice said again, this time with a cold mockery. "Come in and see." A primal fear seized Amelia, but it was overshadowed by a frantic urge to know the truth. She shakily pulled out her phone, switched on the video recorder, and pointed the lens at the door. Taking a deep breath, she pushed with all her might. Just before the door could swing open, a shadow fell over her from behind. "What are you looking for in my room, Amelia?" Amelia screamed and spun around. Ms. Morwen was standing right behind her, so close she could smell the damp, earthy odor emanating from her clothes. And in her arms was Leo, staring at her with wide-open eyes. The phone slipped from Amelia's hand, clattering onto the floor. "Why are you snooping around with a camera, Ms. Morwen asked, her voice sharp as a knife. Amelia stammered, speechless, paralyzed by the shock and absurdity of the situation. How could she have moved from the porch to here so quickly without a sound, Ms. Morwen? Her face, a mask of anger, turned and entered her room, slamming the door shut and locking it from the inside. Only then did Amelia realize Leo was still in there with her. "Give me back my son," she pounded on the door. "Ms. Morwen, open the door. Give me Leo." A moment later, the door opened. Ms. Morwen stood there, tears in her eyes. "What is wrong with you?" she sobbed. "I put Leo in his crib ages ago. Why are you accusing me of bringing him in here?" Amelia could have sworn she had seen Leo in her arms just seconds before. Utterly confused and frantic, she could only mumble another apology and rush to her son's room. He was in his crib, sleeping soundly. Was I really losing my mind, she wondered, helpless tears rolling down her cheeks. She couldn't wait any longer. Tonight she had to see what the camera had recorded. That night was hell. Leo cried incessantly, a pained, high-pitched wail Amelia had never heard before. She and Mike took turns trying to soothe him, but nothing worked. Strangely, Ms. Morwen never emerged from her room, even as the baby's cries echoed through the house. Mike, unable to stand it anymore, went and knocked on her door. No answer. He tried the knob. It was still locked. It was the first time Amelia saw a crack in Mike's absolute trust. "Why would she lock her door?" he muttered, a sliver of doubt in his voice. "How can anyone sleep through this?" He looked at Amelia, and for a moment she saw his fear mirroring her own. "Keep an eye on her," he whispered. Maybe you were right." The next morning, Mike suggested Amelia call in sick. "Stay home today," he said. "Something is really not right with her." A fragile hope sparked in Amelia. He finally believed her. As soon as Mike left for work and Ms. Morwen was busy in the kitchen, Amelia rushed into Leo's room and retrieved the memory card from the teddy bear camera. Trembling, she inserted it into her laptop. She fast-forwarded through the first few hours, seeing only Ms. Morwen putting Leo to sleep. But then, as the on-screen clock ticked into the afternoon, the scene changed. And it was worse than anything she could have imagined. The screen showed every detail clearly. 6 women, including Ms. Morwen, all dressed in dark red robes, stood in a circle around the metal basin filled with dirty water. Her son was in it. Ms. Morwen was beating a large drum placed in the center of the room, its rhythm bizarre and disturbing. Amelia held her breath. her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a scream. But the most horrific sight was yet to come. A woman standing next to Ms. Morwen pulled out a small vial. She blew a puff of black powder into the air. The powder swirled into a thick cloud of smoke, and from within it, another woman materialized. Amelia zoomed in on the image, and a strangled cry escaped her throat. It was Eleanor, her mother-in-law. She stopped thinking. She acted on pure maternal instinct. She burst into the room, snatched a still drowsy Leo from his crib, grabbed the laptop, and ran out of the house, taking nothing but her child and the horrific proof. She drove to a cheap motel in the next town, bolted the door, and sent the video to Mike with a single text message. "This is what your mother and her friends are doing to our son." Mike called back almost instantly, his voice filled with horror and rage. "Where are you? Send me the address. I'm coming now." A short while later, he burst into the motel room, his face pale. He threw his arms around Amelia and Leo. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry, I didn't believe you." He pulled out his phone, and in front of Amelia, he called his mother. "What the hell are you doing?" he screamed into the phone, his anger genuine. "Harming your own first grandchild. Was that your plan? Don't ever call me again." He hung up, looking completely broken. "We have to expose them," he said to Amelia, his eyes burning with resolve. Amelia felt a wave of relief. Finally, she wasn't alone. They would face this together. She stood up to slide the security chain on the door. That's when she heard the whoosh of air behind her. Mike had grabbed an empty glass bottle from the table. With an inarticulate roar, he swung it with all his might at her head. A blinding pain exploded. The light fractured into 1,000 pieces. The last thing Amelia saw before darkness consumed her was her husband's face contorted by an emotion she couldn't recognize, and the motel room door swinging open. Ms. Morwen was standing there, waiting. "She's unconscious," he whispered to Ms. Morwen, who stood in the doorway, his voice urgent and panicked. "Get the boy. Hurry. I'll figure out how to get her to the car." "We must hurry," Ms. Morwen hissed, her eyes glinting feverishly in the motel's dim yellow light. "The ritual must be completed before midnight. We don't have much time." What Mike, whose real name was Billy, didn't know was that in her last moment of consciousness, Amelia had managed one thing. With a supreme effort of will, her thumb had swiped and tapped on her phone's screen, sending a short, desperate message to the only family she had in the city, her cousin Jake. Motel 66, Route 9. Help, Billy. Jake was in a noisy sports bar with two friends, the roar of the football game drowning out conversation. He felt his phone vibrate and pulled it out, annoyed. But when he read the message, the smile vanished from his face. He knew Amelia. She wasn't one for pranks, especially not this kind. "Something's wrong," he said to his friends, showing them the screen. "I have to go." "We're coming with you," one friend said immediately without hesitation. As Jake's old pickup truck turned into the Motel 66 parking lot, he saw it. Billy and a motel employee struggling to load Amelia, who looked like a limp rag doll, into the back seat of a sedan. Jake's heart seized. He immediately backed up, killed his headlights, and began to follow them at a safe distance, the night's darkness his only ally. Billy's car stopped in front of their own house, the same house that just hours before had been a symbol of Amelia's perfect life. "We have to finish this ritual before midnight," Ms. Morwen said, getting out of the car with Leo in her arms. Just then, Jake honked his horn, a blaring sound that ripped through the quiet of the sleeping neighborhood. He got out of his truck, a wide fake grin plastered on his face to hide the anxiety churning inside him. "Hey, Billy," he called out, walking toward his increasingly stressed-out brother-in-law. "Just passing by, thought I'd drop in and see Amelia." "Now," Billy snapped, unable to hide his irritation. "It's almost midnight. Who comes to someone's house at this hour without calling?" Billy tried to turn and go inside, but Jake grabbed his arm. "Where's Amelia?" Jake asked, the smile gone, his voice turning cold. Billy's eyes darted around nervously. Just then, Jake's friends ran to the sedan. They opened the back door. "Jake, she's here. She's hurt," Rage erupted. Jake swung a hook connecting squarely with Billy's jaw, sending him sprawling onto the lawn. "What did you do to my cousin?" Jake roared. No one noticed that Ms. Morwin had slipped inside the house with the baby. Billy broke down sobbing, a pathetic and confusing sight. "You don't understand?" He wept, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. "If we don't do the ritual, my son will die. He'll die just like my brother did." Jake's friends looked at each other bewildered, while Jake stared at Billy with contempt. "What ritual? What the hell are you talking about?" "In my family," Billy explained hastily, words tumbling out in a panic. "Every firstborn son has to go through this ritual before his first birthday to be protected. My older brother died because my father wouldn't let my mother do it. I can't lose my son." Just then Amelia came to in the back seat. Her head throbbed, but her husband's insane words were sharper than any physical pain. She understood. The horrific deception, the insidious manipulation. With a surge of desperate energy, she stumbled out of the car and ran toward the house, screaming her son's name. "Give me back my son!" she yelled, pounding on Ms. Morwin's bedroom door, but it remained shut. Hearing Amelia's anguished cries, Jake ordered his friends to hold Billy down. He charged into the house, looking around for anything. His eyes landed on the heavy iron set of fireplace tools. He grabbed the poker, rushed to the door, and with all his might slammed it against the wood. The wood splintered. The door burst open. The drumming and chanting stopped abruptly. All the women in the room, including Eleanor, turned to look, their eyes burning with a hateful fire. "What are you doing here?" Eleanor shrieked, her beautiful face now grotesquely twisted. "Do you want my grandson to die?" Amelia didn't waste a second. She ran toward the metal basin where her son was submerged in the filthy water. But as she got close, an invisible wall, a powerful force, threw her backward. Jake tried to intervene, but he was slammed to the floor by the same force, writhing in pain. "Hold them back. It's almost time," Ms. Morwin commanded. The women formed an arc near the door, their hands linked, resuming their chant in their dark language, creating a shimmering barrier of energy. Amelia lay on the floor, tears and helplessness nearly consuming her. But then another power more ancient and primal than any magic rose from deep within her. The power of a mother. She got to her feet, trembling but resolute. She didn't remove her clothes, but she bared her soul, exposing a mother's heart to the evil forces. She walked toward them, toward the invisible wall of energy. "He is my son," she said, her voice shaking, but clear, echoing through the room. "I carried him for 9 months. He is my flesh and my blood. In the name of the love that created him, I command any evil force that would take him from me to be gone." She pushed forward against the resistance. "I am his mother," she screamed, pouring all her love, pain, and fury into the words. "I have the power to give him life, and no one has the right to take it away." As she spoke those words, something miraculous happened. Leo, who had been silent the entire time, suddenly began to cry. A loud, healthy, life-filled cry. He sat up in the basin of water. The women panicked. The ritual was broken. "What have you done, Amelia?" Eleanor shrieked, tears of rage and fear streaming down her face. "Do you want me to be killed?" Without wasting another second, Amelia lunged forward through the now weakened barrier, lifted her son, wrapped him tightly in a nearby blanket, and ran from the hellish room. For the first time in weeks, Leo nestled against her and nursed normally. Jake staggered to his feet, looking around the now empty room. The women had vanished. He limped outside to find Billy collapsed on the lawn, sobbing in his friend's arms. "Leave him," Jake said. "It's over." He helped Amelia and Leo into his truck and drove away, leaving the house of nightmares behind. The next day, Billy got a call. His mother Eleanor was dead. A massive stroke. Billy, in shock, didn't initially connect her death to the failed ritual. Amelia filed for divorce. Billy, still haunted by his mother's curse, waited for news of Leo's death before his second birthday to prove Amelia had been wrong. But when Leo blew out the candles on his second birthday cake, healthy and happy, Billy's worldview began to crumble. He sought out his father's sister, the aunt his mother had forbidden him from ever contacting. She told him the entire horrifying truth. His mother was part of a coven where each member had to sacrifice their firstborn child in exchange for power and wealth. She had sacrificed all her other children, keeping only Billy so he could produce more children for her to sacrifice. His father had tried to fight her and had been murdered for it. Devastated by the truth, Billy, with his aunt's help, began a long journey toward redemption. After months of therapy and tireless effort, Amelia, for the sake of their son, agreed to allow him to be a part of Leo's life, but never a part of hers again. The generational curse was broken not by magic, but by a mother's unshakable love.